My dearest Anya, the war drags ever on. Our casualties mount, and yet we gain inches of ground every day. We are told to have faith in Comrade Stalin, and I would be a fool to discount the abilities of Comrade Stalin. But could we have beaten the fascists faster if we had actually bothered to buy any doctrines at all? Alright, that's enough. No more bad-mouthing Comrade Stalin in this video. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Counterfactual Gaming, the gaming channel where if there's something historical in a video game, we don't do it. Now, before we get started, I'd just like to invite anyone who enjoys the content that they're seeing to go ahead and subscribe to the channel or put a like on the video. And if you have any suggestions on other things I can do that's counterfactual in a video game, leave a comment down below. Or if you're just curious about what actually happened historically, leave a comment down below in the comments and I'll be sure to get back to you. But today we're going to do something very special. And I say this with all seriousness because this is going to be special. If you thought that fighting as France with no doctrines and not removing victors of the Great War, if you thought that was a good challenge, just wait till you see that the challenge we have for today. Because today, I said to myself, what would be the stupidest way to fight World War II from the perspective of the Red Army? And the answer I came up with was, well, not removing any of the Red Army's bad spirits, not buying any doctrines, and focusing purely on political and economic focuses as the Soviet Union. But that wasn't good enough. But could I do that facing Germany boosted to maximum? Now, this counterfactual way of playing the Soviet Union is a little bit complicated, so let me walk you through the challenge here. The goal here is to have the most economically and politically efficient Soviet Union while having a Red Army, Soviet Air Force that are just completely incompetent and still win the war. So what I mean by that is we will have no doctrines researched on either land, sea, or air. But we're also not going to be modifying the terrible spirits that the Soviet Air Force and the Red Army start with one slight thing I'll show you in just a second. You'll know, those of you who've played the Soviet Union, you're very familiar with how bad of a debuff the Red Army is and how bad of a debuff the Soviet Air Force starts with. We're not going to be fixing any of this. Our divisions throughout the entire war will not only have no doctrines, but they're suffering from that minus 15% penalty to division org. As you can see in the national focus view, even by 1944, I will not have done any of these focuses. I'm not removing any of the bad stuff. The only thing I'm going to be doing to modify the Red Army is strengthen the mobilization plan, because I need that to get to Leningrad Polytechnical Institute. But this doesn't make the Red Army better at fighting. It's literally just improved mobilization. It doesn't do anything to, say, improve org. It doesn't give us extra command power. It doesn't do any of this important stuff down here that would make the Red Army actually capable of fighting. And we're also not picking up any of these air focuses over here either. So we don't have things like expand aviation institutes or women in aviation or everyone's favorite, the modernize aircraft facilities, which leads to the merging of aircraft plants. We're not doing any of that. The horrible penalties the Red Army and the Soviet Air Force start with are the penalties we're going to be using throughout the entire war. What will we be doing, though? Well, we're going to be focusing on politics and economics. It's the Soviet Union. We don't care about any of that other stuff. We are going to focus on politics and economics. We're going to have the best politicians and the best economics. And here's what I mean. We're going to be pushing into Stalin's cult of personality. We're going to be making sure we have good propaganda. We're going to, instead of doing anything like positive heroism or war heroes, don't care about any of that. We're going to be doing things like collectivist propaganda and socialist realism. And we're going to be making sure that we go all the way through, as much as possible, these industrial focuses over here. We're also going to call in the foreign experts, which you'll see in just a second. We're going to be doing all of the focuses we need to get production boosts. So, for example, I've got the foreign experts, which gives me production efficiency cap and factory output boost, in addition to military factory construction speed. Further production efficiency cap boost and a factory output boost on the Groban Design Bureau. I got Kalinin in charge in order to boost my stability. Of course, we went total mobilization. And if we take a look at stability here, between collectivist propaganda, Kalinin, and Stalin, we have 100% stability even at war, even with women in the workforce, and even though our war support's only sitting at 61%. Maximum stability. And what does that maximum stability give us? Well, we're stacking maximum stability with production bonuses, and we're stacking it with production efficiency cap. Production efficiency cap is at 132%. Normally you can only get to 100%, and that's with all the techs in place. But I've utilized all of the little bonuses in the tree in order to stack my production efficiency to ridiculous levels. And we just let these factories run constantly. And the result of just letting them run constantly with ridiculous production efficiency on top of all of those little special bonuses that you've seen that I've plucked from the economic focuses gives me an output that is just staggering. These 15 factories on infantry kits produce 400 kits per day. 400. That is an absurd number of infantry kits to generate from just 15 things. Now, I recently swapped over to producing jets and new types of tanks. So the production efficiency hasn't managed to raise up on these yet. But we're going to see ridiculously high production efficiency on tanks and aircraft as well. And we are also going to spend time running propaganda. I mean, we've got under the leadership of Stalin, because why not? But when possible, we're going to do things like accomplish the high yield. Every hit of a hammer hits the enemy. All those sorts of things to further boost my production. And we are incredibly efficient at building new factories. Between the Politburo and my industrial design company with foreign advisors, we are super fast at building military factories. But I've also managed to bring consumer good factories under 10% without even firing war bonds, or we will accomplish the high yield. This is thanks to socialist emulation and high stability and the Politburo. Although, I do want to point out that one of the disadvantages of the 5-year plan is that hefty 8% increase in consumer goods factories. But we're mitigating that and going past it with the focuses that I have selected. All in all, this is a recipe for having all the guns that I could possibly want to throw at the Germans. We just have really, really bad divisions. How bad are those divisions? Well, if you take a look at most of my divisions, you're going to see that they have org of like 38 versus German divisions that have a potential org of like 76. So it's an uphill battle to do much of anything as the Soviet Union. If I have enough economists and I have enough politicians, I can defeat Germany, even if Germany is boosted. And just to show that I did boost Germany, I want you to see what boosted Germany looks like for just a second. We tag over, and you can see that Germany, because Germany has been strengthened, Germany is also sitting at production efficiency cap of 130%. We can see that Germany is also getting ridiculous amounts of political power that Germany is using to do all different kinds of things. Things like war bonds, exhort heroism, and all that kind of stuff. Now, I should point out that there are some things it's harder to see in the tooltips, but Germany also benefits from better attack on cores and also benefits from a massive reduction in supply consumption. So Germany boosted all the way to 50% gives Germany massive benefits that they don't otherwise enjoy in normal gameplay. And we're going to be trying to overcome those massive benefits without the benefit of a Red Army that knows what in the hell it's doing. Now, I'm using field marshals to control most of this so they don't have to micro everything, but I'm having my field marshals defend the Riga River line from Riga to Vitebsk to Kiev, not quite to Dnipropetrovsk, but all the way down here. And I like defending this line because it puts a lot of big rivers in the way of German forces. And so the Germans can either try to drive through the Vitebsk corridor, or they can throw themselves at rivers all day. I do have 24 Panzer divisions that are about ready to fight. These Panzer divisions are going to be deployed in different theaters to help prepare for counterattacks. And I just want to look at what the Red Army looks like right now. The Red Army is about 4 million men strong. And I've got all the equipment I could really need for it, including I've deployed around 7,000 tanks. I'm a little short on tank destroyers, but that's my fault. That's an unintentional mistake on my part. I underestimated the number of tank destroyers I would need to put in divisions. In fact, I can correct that right here by doing that. That was my goof. But I have plenty of equipment, and I have factories that are taking advantage of production efficiency caps. I don't have them all yet by 1941 when Barbarossa starts, as you can see, but I've got a lot of them. And some of these factories have just been sitting on the same item for years. You can tell I upgraded AT guns and AA guns recently, and you can tell I decided to add some more train production. But these Lag 3s, some of these have been in production for a long time. And I do have an air force of around 3,700 planes, which is not really super good, but that's because I forgot to add another 600 planes to the training pool because I'm an idiot. Don't mind me. But I do have plenty of aircraft. And these aircraft are super expensive. And I'm going to show you why. The Lag 3 costs $42 to build. And that's because I decided to make a plane this time around that would do all the things that I needed it to do in 41 to 43. Now, when I get to later in the war, I have to design a new plane because German subs keep operating off my coast, and this plane can't attack them. But this plane has the heavy machine guns and the Tier 2 anti-tank cannon, which gives it plenty of ground attack per plane. It has lots of armored plates, and it needs drop tanks, so it actually has some range to offset the armored plates. It's got the Tier 3 engine. This plane should not normally be that good at air-to-air combat, but it's good enough at air-to-air combat compared to the Bf-109s that the Germans are running, to the point where that this kind of hybrid ground attack air superiority plane is able to beat the dedicated air superiority aircraft of the German. And because this is basically the only plane I'm making, I can just spam them with my production efficiency cap and get ridiculous. I'm going to show you in a little while what happens to the Luftwaffe when they try to tangle with this plane. I do have a couple of spare planes left over from the stockpiles of the Baltic states and the Spanish Civil War, but don't mind them. They are not a factor in this discussion. Comparing that to Germany, well, how's Germany doing? Germany has a slightly smaller army than I do. They have a significantly higher factory count, and they've got some trains and trucks. And yeah, they have not as many factories as I do on aircraft. I've got way more factories on aircraft than the Germans do. But if you look at this number right here, that's the number to somewhat start getting scared about. Because I could kill 500,000 infantry kits a year, and I don't think Germany is going to care. I have to kill German manpower in order to win this war. And Germany is sitting at extensive conscription with 2 million, almost 3 million spare manpower. By October of 41, the Germans have broken through the river line barely in the vicinity of Gomel. This was a very costly offensive to get through there. And I want to show you how costly it was. If we look at details, we can see that there's rough parity in aircraft losses. But you'll notice that I'm getting a bunch of planes shot down by AA guns. And the reason that's happening is because all of my aircraft are basically permanently set to both ground attack and logistics strike. They only generate air superiority when they're flying those missions, and they're not intentionally shooting down enemy planes. They just happen to be shooting down enemy planes. But I want you to look at this. In terms of fighters, in air-to-air combat, the Germans are a little bit ahead of us, and it looks like we're losing way more planes than them. But if you total up all of the enemy planes that are lost, suddenly you begin to realize that the Germans are just losing and hemorrhaging aircraft all over the place. And this is in one area. This is the area of the front where they are trying to dominate. You'll notice that in the Ukraine, I basically have free reign to do whatever I want. And so we're just destroying logistics there. The Baltic, we're just destroying logistics there. Although, I hate to say this, armored trains are killing some of my planes. We are slowly wearing them down through a combination of defensive warfare and air power. And I want us to take a look at something here. This is the consequence of the Germans' offensive. They're starting to run out of trucks, and they're kind of not doing so hot on trains, and they're only getting 22% of their supply fulfillment. Their divisions only have 92% of their equipment quota. Why is that? Well, because within 4 months of fighting, I've only lost this much equipment, but Axis forces have lost all of this equipment, including 9,400 light tanks are just gone. Those infantry kits, Germany can replace those. The artillery and the trucks are going to start being a problem for Germany to keep replacing over time. And on top of that, the Luftwaffe only has 2,600 planes, while the Soviet Air Force continues to expand. I'm able to outproduce them in aircraft, and that difference is only becoming worse as we get closer and closer to production efficiency cap. Also, I'm able to mass produce tanks without too much difficulty. Our Soviet armor has not been super important yet in the combats that we've been having. We haven't had a chance to do any big counterattacks yet. I am able to hold back 800 some odd planes here for training to get them up to speed while still producing enough aircraft to keep wings relatively well supplied with aircraft. In other words, German superiority in doctrines is not going to overcome my ability to produce equipment. Meanwhile, look at Germany. 1941, they're already down to 49% war support and 47% stability. Now, in another game, that would probably be really a serious problem for the Germans. But with Germany being strengthened to the maximum, they have the political power to fix those problems. And so Germany is just going to dump hundreds or thousands of political power into upgrading war support and stopping army mutinies. Also, I just want to point out that Germany is, down 1.7 million men, and I'm only down 156,000. That's going to change when the time comes for us to go on the offensive. Now, in the spring and summer of 42, I do launch an offensive. It's not a very exciting offensive, because as you can see here, we just kind of broke out a little bit from Vitebsk. And we kind of took back some stuff near Gomel. And we made some progress down here. But it has been tough going because we just don't have a whole lot of org. And my divisions don't have any benefits from doctrines, while the Germans are fully benefiting from all of their doctrine choices. In fact, if we go and take a look at army doctrines, you can tell that they've gone all the way through desperate defense, which gives them more recruitable population, and it gives them the guerrilla tactics tactic. which is going to make life difficult for us as we attack, because my generals don't have any good tactics to throw at the Germans. But if we take a look here, you can see that we've been fighting under completely green air for some time, which is what allowed me to go on the offensive. We have been consistently bombing German logistics as well as just thrashing German ground units with ground attack when and as it's possible. And if we take a look at aircraft losses over months, you're going to see that the numbers are staggeringly bad. What started as rough parity earlier in the war has become a complete rout by now. Even with AA gun losses, accidents losses, and planes shot down by trains, I'm still beating out the enemy just looking at their air battle losses, not even counting support and bombers lost to things like AA. It's a ridiculous amount of aircraft for them to be losing. You'll notice the Luftwaffe is sitting at 2.4K. They are trying to outproduce me. And you'll notice, though, that out of all those planes, only 1.2K of them are fighters. The rest are like bombers and support aircraft. Meanwhile, I have 1,200 planes still exercising in Moscow. That's not even counting the planes that are at the front right now giving me green air. And at the end of my summer offensive here, I was microing the front, and look, I have 951 more planes that I can throw into air wings. We should probably get those started up. We are massacring them in the skies. If we take a look at year-long equipment losses, this really shows how bad it is for the Germans, even though we did an offensive. I mean, they've lost 220,000 infantry kits, 10,000 light tanks, 10,000 artillery, whereas, I'm just losing hardly anything. 500 medium tanks for me, that's nothing. Take a look at how much I produce. This production line of 15 factories by itself produces 10 tanks a day. When combined with this other production line, it takes us, this isn't even a month's worth of losses here in terms of tanks. That's not even counting like the minimal losses in other categories. This is a disaster for the Germans. They cannot sustain this in the long run. But remember, Germany is boosted. And you'll notice that the German army is getting larger. And they are throwing more factories onto tanks and to basic equipment. Not onto air power, which I think is a failure of the AI. What's really hampering the AI, though, here is you'll notice that the AI is out of trains. And they are really running low on trucks, too. Because logistics bombing is just ripping them to shreds. So their divisions constantly fight at low supply. You take a look at these divisions, and you'll notice a lot of these divisions have low supply status and low strength. They cannot get back up to full strength necessarily while they're under such terrible supply consideration. Now, the success of the previous offensive, while it wasn't spectacular, led me to think that the Germans were ready to fold, and that, I could wrap this war up before 1945. You have no idea how wrong I was. And in my suicidal overconfidence, you can see that I've planned an offensive here using armor to break through the front in a couple of places. The goal was to try and link up with paratroopers and use paratroopers to cut off Germans from their railway network and then just run them over. This doesn't work very well for a whole list of reasons. And part of the reason this offensive doesn't work is because I foolishly did not put armor over here to try and complete the encirclement, because I really thought that the paratroopers could just take all of that themselves. This guy is a good paratrooping commander. He's got the glider planes upgrade. And so I started my offensive. And that was when I realized that several of these tiles in the rear actually did have divisions sitting on them, which are going to wipe out those paratroopers, and it means we're not going to be able to break through as effectively as I thought we were. And so I get to watch in real time, despite having massive air superiority, despite having all the firepower I could possibly want on my tanks, I get to watch the Soviet paratrooper corps get annihilated while my tanks aren't even able to break through the front. And it was here, in July of 1942, that I began to realize that even though we had made some movement on the front, that this wasn't going to work. That the war will last forever if I keep trying to fight the war this way. And that's when I made the big brain decision to begin researching jets and nukes. As you can see, by April of 43, I mean, we kind of made some progress, but we're just not making much progress. I recruited an entirely new set of paratroopers. These guys mostly die in the upcoming spring offensive again. And even more scathing is that Germany has managed to upgrade their war support and their stability, despite all of my efforts. And I've been heavily bombing them, and it doesn't matter. They are able to just pour political power into mitigating the effects of degraded war support, which has brought their stability back up too. If we take a look at the factory screen, you can see that Germany is still significantly outpacing me in terms of factory counts. However, you'll notice that their issue with trains hasn't gotten any better. They still don't have any trains. They're running out of trucks, so their supply situation is in really bad shape. They did have to start going to service by requirement here in 43, and that's because they're down about 3 million manpower. But this is nothing. This is small potatoes. I thought that this 3 million, I was like, oh wow, that's gonna be what helps break them. And the answer to that is no, it's not gonna be what breaks them. Because if we take a look over here, you can see that even though they're having some difficulty getting equipment to their units, the German army is almost at 5 million now, while my army is still only sitting at less than 5 million. The long and short of it is, I'm not going to be able to win without nuclear weapons. Luckily, I can just make a ton of those if I really need to. I mean, what else am I going to research, right? Jets, nuclear weapons. I don't need anything from these two tabs. I've already cleaned up the IC techs. I've already got all the techs that I want from over here. I could start with rocket artillery, but I didn't want to spend the extra tungsten. I'm just waiting for one more year so I can research the last of these few techs. And while I could go the BTR route and make mech, I am having to import tons of rubber, so I wasn't in the mood to spend even more rubber building mech when I'm spending tons of rubber on aircraft. You will notice that I haven't picked up any infantry kit techs, and this is because I'm literally abusing my production efficiency cap to keep these factories running at full blast. If I ever swapped over to better infantry kits, I would have to reallocate industrial production because those factories would start at lower production efficiency. Now, I am starting to run short of AT guns because I'm not producing enough AT guns. I swapped over to AT Gun 3 recently, and you can tell my production efficiency is bad. But it doesn't matter. The Germans don't have enough medium tanks to matter. If we take a look at 12 months worth of losses on the front, yeah, they just are using light tanks. I don't know why they're not even using medium tanks. What are you doing, Germany? If we take a look at their templates, that's just light tanks, and that's just light tanks. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really need good AT guns to take that out. It is worth noting, though, that now that I've been on the offensive, you can tell that they are losing far less equipment than when they were trying to break through my lines. It's also at this point that I began producing the Yak 3, which is on the 1944 airframe. And I decided I needed some naval attack, so I slapped on torpedoes and a spare module because I got tired of German subs raiding my convoys. So I've got some Yaks on naval strike duty up here in the Barents Sea, and here in the Baltic. But the Yak is just basically an even better version of what I was doing before, still using the anti-tank cannon and still shredding stuff on the ground. And you can tell that the Luftwaffe is finally starting to get Focke-Wulf 190s in production. I mean, it doesn't match my 12,000 aircraft, but they've been doing the best they can. I mean, they still can't beat me in the skies. Over the Ukraine in particular, it's been a really ugly fight. But not ugly for them, not for me. I even have planes within range of Berlin, and I've been starting to bomb logistics in Berlin proper. It's 1944, and as you can see, we're still not making a whole lot of progress. We've made it to Königsberg, but we even get pushed back from that. But in my quest to have aircraft that are even better than anyone else, we are now building jet aircraft with modern airframes. But because the Axis powers are basically incapable of shooting my planes down, I've done something kind of crazy. I swapped in the non-strategic materials usage module because they're not shooting my planes down in air combat anyway, so who cares? And this cuts my aluminum demand down because aluminum has been a serious problem for me. So I want you to imagine a jet fighter that has wood incorporated into its construction because I don't have enough aluminum for it. I have tungsten, I just don't have enough wood. And this plane, with this loadout, I do have some armor plates in it to give it at least minimal air defense. But it's got a range of 2,000 kilometers, which is pretty darn good. And I'm slowly getting those built into my Air Force. But it's at this point that I began to realize that we needed something to help break the Germans, because no matter what I'm doing, it looks like I'm winning, but if we take a look at losses over the past 12 months, I'm not really winning that much. My win ratio is terrible. I lost 2.78 manpower over the past year. I'm still losing less equipment than the Germans, but as you can tell, these numbers are terrible compared to the numbers that we were seeing before. And with Germany being strengthened, I can't sort of afford to sustain those losses. And look at it. I'm down 4 million men. The Germans are down almost 9 million men. That did force the Germans into all adult serve recently. But even with that, let's keep in mind that Germany has recruitable population over here, so I'm not going to just run them out of manpower either. That isn't going to happen. And their army has consistently remained around 5 million men ever since 42. The only thing I can say is that Germany's factory count has not expanded any further, and I'm going to show you why. Germany's factory count has not expanded too much because Germany is trying to fix their rail network. Because the rail network and the loss of trains is really hamstringing their ability to fight. Also, Germany's down to 1% consumer goods. Ugh. But it's at this point that I begin to realize that I need to do something different. And so I create a strategic bomber. Now, there's different versions of this that I make. At one point, I put some turrets on it just to discourage like small groups of German fighters attacking them. But this is a Soviet strategic bomber with 4 jets on it and non-strategic materials usage to keep the aluminum costs down. I put these in for production. It's got a range of 5,000 kilometers, even with ridiculous bomb loads like this. And I put these into production, and it takes like 9 months to get enough of them for me to start bombing Berlin. But the goal here, I thought, oh, okay, I can't break through the front, but maybe I can flatten German cities. I was only 50% correct. Because, again, what I'm not doing is I'm not getting any Air Force doctrines. And it turns out those Air Force doctrines, you really miss these bonuses if you're trying to do a strategic bombing campaign. That's a nice strategic bomber I've made. It's got a massive payload. Each plane has 85 strategic attack when on strategic bombing. And it's not going to do that much damage to Germany. So if we take a look at the bombing I'm doing in Eastern Germany, I've got 661 of these bombers flying there. Couple of different versions of them. And if you take a look at their months, they've really only bombed 93 buildings over the past year. And that seems like a lot, but if we keep in mind, Germany is boosted. So if we take a look at intelligence view, I haven't really done that much damage to German factory output with all those planes. I've killed some factories in Berlin, but it's really just 4% of German factory output. It's not, like, it doesn't hurt Germany at all. I was mistaken when I thought that strategic bombers would be my savior. But you know what will save me? Nuclear bombs. I've already got 6 reactors built. We have the tech in place. We're building nuclear bombs, and we're going to keep building these. I also, later on, when I began to realize that even with all of these techs completed, I still don't have enough fuel, I do start filling out the synthetic tree to offset my rubber need, but also just to provide extra fuel. Because a constant problem I'm having is that I have tons of aircraft, and they consume tons of fuel, and I'm having a hard time supplying panzers and aircraft at the same time. Also, this is another railway gun that is just sitting behind my lines doing nothing. Good job, railway gun. Good job. Now, in April of 46 is when I finally begin to use nuclear bombs as part of my offensive strategy. You can tell that I've even lost progress. The Germans retook some of this stuff from me. And I'm not making that much progress towards Bucharest. I really would like to take Bucharest because that would sever a significant source of oil to the German Reich. But yeah, I lost ground because Germany their divisions are so much better at fighting than mine. They still have terrible supply, and their war support is even lower. But I did a test. Before deciding on using nuclear weapons to breach German lines, I did drop nukes on Berlin just to see if that would impact German war support in an alternate save game. And it didn't move the needle on war support enough to matter. So from now until 1949, all nuclear weapons are used to break German lines because that's the only thing that they're useful for. It's the only way I can break their org. So what we do here, as an example of my Spring 46 offensive. Now, there's still some mud in certain places, and I learned the hard way that mud is going to pop up during these offensives. Try to cut these guys off. He's going to go through there. This guy's going to go through here. Okay. And the way I set these offensives up, so I don't have to micro them too much, is I've got my nukes ready. I've got my air power in position. We should be able to nuke any of these areas that we want to because we have the requisite air superiority. You can tell I'm focusing on this area because I've got 3,600 aircraft on logistics strike and ground attack. Like, I'm just, like, bombing the hell out of their railway guns. And so what I do is I have the Panzer divisions begin to move, advance 1 hour, then I order the infantry divisions to start, and then I drop my nukes. I've only got 2. I'm producing 2.1. I get 2.1% progress per day on nukes right now. I'm still building nuclear reactors. So I can only drop a couple of them. Okay. Now, that lets me get through by ripping these divisions who are defending. This rips them to pieces. Superior German org means very little when both the divisions holding the tile and the divisions in reserve have just been nuked. So we plow right on through with glorious Soviet armor. And we're going to have those guys split the difference and go that way while I try to meet up over here. Now, they have no way of piercing my divisions. They're not even close to piercing them. And you can tell that I'm ripping them up with air power. But you'll notice that we're not moving the needle too much over here. Hold on. You need to stop. I don't want these guys getting too far ahead. These guys push ahead while the infantry are supposed to fill in behind them. Go there. Now that the Germans have divisions that have not been nuked coming in to reinforce, their nice org really begins to help them. We'll open up another axis of attack there. And you can see that I run out of fuel. Even using a nuclear strike, I run out of fuel before I can close the encirclement. I have to rest the Panzer divisions. Hopefully they're going to refuel. And then we can make another play for it. But I don't have another nuke ready, so I can't close the encirclement. And this is what happens over and over again. Let's see if we can pin these guys from trying to escape. Here, pin. Pin those guys so that we can break out. Yeah, it's not going to happen. We are going to run out of org. We just can't. I just can't complete the encirclement. But we did make some progress, at least. And this is what 3 years of warfare is going to look like. Over and over again. And that's, you know, what makes this sad is that even the German units with the best piercing have nothing against my armor divisions. But my armor divisions have such weak org that they don't last long enough to break through. It's November of 47, and this is as much progress as we've made. And by progress, I mean I managed to get a couple of my divisions cut off in Bucharest because the AI didn't shuffle units around correctly. And so I have to go rescue these guys and reclaim Bucharest. Holding Bucharest is important because that VP controls the oil in Romania and has a bunch of Romania's factories. So taking those out of Axis hands is really a good idea. But even dropping atomic bombs, and I'm making atomic bombs much faster than I was. 4% progress on a bomb per day, so I basically make an atomic bomb every 25 days or so. And this is the best that I can do. But I want you to see something for a second. This is the world that I'm in. That's Vichy landing on the Baltic coast. They did it several times. I had to clean up a bunch of Vichy attacks, and they are not messing around. They really are trying. But you know what makes me even more irritable? This is what makes me more irritable. Do you know what you're looking at right now? you're looking at the result of Vichy joining the Axis as a full partner. Vichy orchestrated an attack on Ireland that was so successful they occupied the island and it let the Italians invade Scotland. And then Vichy invaded the main body of England. The British have capitulated. They are still technically in the war, and you can see that Italy has fractured because of the British invasion, which is even more hilarious. But Vichy orchestrated the defeat of the English. So Germany doesn't care about anything happening out here in the West. They don't care. They've got Vichy to cover them. They've got the Reichskommissariats to cover them. They can throw everything in the East to me now. So if any of you were looking at this and saying to yourself, oh, you have to hurry to reach Berlin because Allies might get to it first. No, you don't understand. The Allies aren't going to do squat. Also, Switzerland is still holding out. The Germans invaded Switzerland. They've occupied most of the country, but the Swiss are still holding out. They are holding out even by the time I reach Berlin. And so, yeah, the Germans are able to focus more troops on me. They're high org troops, and I am stuck just dropping atomic bombs periodically to break through on the front. So I did something that I promised I wouldn't do earlier, but I finally needed to upgrade infantry kits to better kits. I completed that research, and I had to put a whole bunch of factories on it to make up the deficit, because since I've been on the attack, I'm just chewing through the infantry kits. I mean, just, you know, I lost 318,000 infantry kits last year. Sure, Germany lost 547,000 infantry kits. I mean, I'm not complaining. I also lost 3,000 modern tanks. Those are T-55s, by the way. I lost a whole bunch of those as well, but I can afford those. Those tank losses are losses that I can afford. It's the infantry kits that I had to redouble my efforts on. Hilariously, I've actually been able to reduce the size of the German army, but you can tell that they're still doing fine in terms of deployed stockpiles. And they've even been able to start recovering their supply fulfillment because as I get closer to Berlin, they have fewer railways to cover, so even just 100 trains makes a much bigger difference on supply. In other words, the Germans get better at fighting every inch I get closer to Berlin, and no one else is going to bail me out. So it's July of 1948, and we have taken Berlin. Germany still has not surrendered. They're not going to surrender for several more months, but I'm still desperately trying to push ahead. The only reason I'm able to effectively do it at this point is because I've managed to encircle and destroy a bunch of the German army. I finally was able to use nukes repeatedly to create encirclements where I could destroy them. And I have, like, really nice modern tanks now. Although you can tell I'm using captured equipment and infantry kits to make up the difference. But I have really nice tanks that are fast. They move quickly. They've got fuel. However, the cost is ridiculous. Like, I can't refine enough fuel to maintain everything from planes to tanks to the destroyers that need to cover my convoy routes. I'm also, like, if you take a look, I put this up on the screen deliberately because I wanted you to see economically what I have to do to maintain the Soviet economy. And I'm mass producing synthetic plants. I already have a bunch of synthetic plants. Like, I've just got a bunch of synthetic plants, and I am producing even more just to offset my imports because, as you can tell, my traded goods are ridiculously high, thanks to tungsten, aluminum, and all the oil I'm importing. Not only that, nobody's trading with me right now because Britain is sitting over here. They don't control anything. And, oh, look, Japan's about to conquer India. Good job, allies. If this game was going to go on longer, I'd have to bail them out. But I don't have a problem with Japan. Japan and I we're not friends, but we are trade partners. So I'm literally spamming these, and I did pick up all the synthetic techs. If you take a look at my tooltip, you can see that I'm getting 4,600 fuel a day just from refineries, and that number is going to continue to go up. I did consider swapping to limited exports, but it wouldn't have saved enough tungsten or aluminum to matter. And it might not have, and it didn't solve my oil problem. I still didn't have enough oil. So I might as well get the 10% bonus from the export focus and just increase my production. Good news, we're back to even with infantry kits now. It does mean I have to have 45 factories sitting at the production cap to keep up with the infantry kits that I need. You may be wondering why I'm sitting at the production efficiency cap, but we're only making 271 a day. Well, for two reasons. One, I had to swap to service by requirement, which hits my factory output with the Nerf bat. But two, this tier 3 infantry kits costs a lot more than other infantry kits. See, like, this infantry kit is a tier 3 kit. It costs 0.69. The tier 1 kits that I was making before, that only costs 0.50. So it's like a significant cost increase on top of the steel required as well. You can tell I'm running short of steel, although part of that's because I ran out of things I wanted to produce. So I have a bunch of armored cars sort of absorbing captured factories as I put armored cars on occupation duty. But I've got like these infantry kits. These top tier infantry kits, it is much more expensive to produce them than the other ones that I was making. So yeah, I'm fully abusing production efficiency cap. It's just that you're not going to get as many. At this point, we need to talk about casualties. This is the consequence of focusing on economists and politics and having terrible Army and Air Force spirits. The crawl to Berlin has cost me millions of manpower lost. Now, the Axis powers have lost a lot more than I have. Let's be clear. In another situation, trading 14 million manpower for 21 million manpower is still a good trade. That's a good trade. But it's not a clean trade by any stretch of the imagination. And most players who face the AI would see losing 14 million men against the Germans as a symptom of suboptimal play, because that's exactly what it is. It's ludicrous that I've lost that much. As the Soviet Union, it is very rare that I ever have to get to service by requirement. Now, conversely, if we look at Germany, Germany has had to go to scraping the barrel in order to make up manpower losses. Part of this is because Germany went scraping the barrel after I advanced past Danzig because they were just losing core manpower. But part of that is just because they've lost so many people. And they want to keep their numbers up. So in order to do that, they're having to literally crank out more divisions that they don't quite have the equipment for anymore, but they're doing the best that they can. But this is what it looks like when economists and politicians are allowed to run your war. We're very stable. I've got Stalin as Mr. Awesome cult of personality guy. I've got 9% consumer goods. And I've got all the factories I could want, producing all the equipment that I could want. I mean, look at this equipment list. I've got 27,000 medium tanks that are all phased out T-34s that I don't have anything to do with them. I'm not going to give them to the stupid allies because they're just going to lose them in capitulations and I'll be seeing them on the other side of the front later. I've got 3,000 fighters I can't use. I've got 1,000 transport aircraft I can't use. I've got 1,400 armored trains I can't use. 18,000 trucks. I've got all of the material I need to fight the war except for fuel. And part of that's just because, like, it costs me $91,000 a day to run all aircraft, which is ridiculous. But I don't have an army that is competent to fight. I have my generals are all right. I mean, Vatutin did a great job. He's my logistics wizard, and he's my infantry expert, and he picked up ranger, which let him be an improv expert. But yeah, no doctrines. We don't get any of those bonuses, and we don't get any of these bonuses either. Which means our strategic bombing campaign was essentially a failure. Good news, though. Kingdom of Italy kicked Mussolini out, and so they're fighting Vichy in Germany. Yugoslavia is partially liberated. The British came in and have taken out Bulgaria. Mussolini's Socialist Republic of Italy has its capital in Sheffield because they don't control any Italian territory anymore. Does it make sense? No, it doesn't make sense. But that's not what's important. What's important here is that I'm going to have to capitulate Germany, and we're going to still have a tough slog to do it because Germany's fighting on their cores with divisions that are super powerful, and mine are not. It's March 12th of 1949. Germany has capitulated. Germany capitulated after having lost 22 million manpower compared to my 17 million manpower. I've occupied almost all of Germany. They still control a bit of the Saar, and that's it. Switzerland's getting liberated. Britain still under Axis occupation. Now, I was hoping this was going to take me to a peace conference because Romania's out of the picture, Hungary's out of the picture, like all of the Axis allies are out of the picture. But if we take a look at the screen, first of all, Franco joined the Axis. Second of all, Bulgaria's still in the fight, and they're a major power. And third, Vichy is now in the fight, and they count as a major power because Germany gave them back almost all of their land. Also, the Free French are now the communist French Commune, but they're still in the Allies, so that's like a whole thing that's happening. If I wanted to keep going, I'd have to also defeat Vichy and Bulgaria. And, like, this video is already so long, and it's already 1949, and you know, I don't feel like just dropping more and more nukes on everything. It's just ridiculous. But I have defeated Germany using politicians and economists rather than good army and air doctrines, and by having a really terrible Red Army. And that about wraps up this little bit of insanity. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a sub on it. And let me know if there's any other content you'd like to see related to Hearts of Iron or any other grand strategy games. This was a real slog to get through. It was insanely difficult, but managed to get through this and prove the superiority of politics of the economy in Hearts of Iron over things like having good soldiers and good doctrines. It's raining again where I live, and my cats really hate the fact that there's no sun, but maybe it's sunnier where you live. Regardless, I hope that you are having a pleasant day.